So this is a miniature I've been looking forward to painting for a while. Today we're going to paint a space wolf on a polar bear, and first off we started with a white undercoat, and although we used a white undercoat, the first coat after that is going to be Corax white, and you need to take your time and make sure you get into all the recesses of the fur for this. Next, once that coat is dry, we're going to apply some white scar with a semi-dry brushing technique to cover all the top of the fur, and that will give you a nice two-tone for the colour of the white. Scavenge Blight Dinge was initially applied to the nose area. Afterwards, white scar was applied into the face and also on the edges where the Scavenge Blight Dinge was, because the face itself is quite smooth in texture, and this way it helps to apply those hairs into the area. Next, if you look at some pictures of some polar bears, you'll often find that, especially around the feet, they're a little bit wet and dirty. So I've used some upshapty bone at the bottom of the feet here to show where the dirt around the feet is. After the upshapty bone has had time to dry, I've used Abaddon black to apply around the claws and also the tip of the nose area, and also the lips around the mouth. For the red areas, like the bedroll on the back and also this area you can see at the moment, which is the blanket on the bear, we've started off with corn red first. Next we've had a 50-50 mix of corn red and Bugman's glow, and once it's dry we've used Carroburg crimson as a wash to go over the whole area. You will notice here I've jumped forward a little bit. I'm using a technique which is referred to as mapping, which basically means you apply all the basic colours and it helps you give an idea of the general idea of the outcome. So I've applied fenrisian grey, a couple of coats on the armoured areas, and then I've used lead belcher on the silver areas, so I can get an idea of how light or dark the miniature is. Next I've used some progressive shades of lighter silvers, followed by a wash of null oil to help to pick out those metallic areas. Now, with this miniature being a polar bear, and they're therefore obviously primarily white, and the fenrisian grey being a very light colour as well, the miniature itself doesn't really have a lot of darkness to it, so I decided to pick a technique to try and make it a little bit darker. So I've decided to give it some chipped armour, and I've started with wulfen grey, and normally I would do this with a sponge, but because there's so much detail on the miniature, I thought it'd be best to do it with a paintbrush this time around. Now in those same areas I'm applying rhinox hide, but you just want to leave a little bit of the wulfen grey showing through to show where the primer has been applied before the actual paint. For the bionic eye, I started off with warpstone glow. Once the paint is dry, next I used warboss green, but I mixed a lot of water into the warboss green, and by applying it with a lot of water, if you give it time for the water to evaporate, as the water evaporates it will leave a fine line. This is a great way for people who aren't too good at painting fine lines around lenses to give that fine line there without having to have the skills with the paintbrush. Also notice how I've angled the bear, so basically it encourages the line to appear in the direction I want it to be. Now on the top right hand side of the eye I've applied Caliban green, and a dot of white scar was applied into the area of the Caliban green, followed by a gloss varnish. These parts of the shoulders were first painted with Uriel yellow. After a couple of coats of that, phalanx yellow was used to pick out some of the edges. Gen Ender's gold was used for the gold areas. I didn't apply any highlights because I wanted to try and keep the area dark because it's a very light model anyway. And then Agrax Earthshade was applied afterwards to tone it down even further. For the green of the blade, I've done a previous video painting a green power sword, so you can look at that for the green areas, and it will be put in the description below anyway. For the black areas, I started off with Abaddon, followed by Scaven Blight Dinge to pick out the edges, and finally using a small amount of White Scar just to pick out some of the edges. If you like the video, remember to like, share and click on the button on the lower right hand side to subscribe.